Awesome. I think we can start now.
Yes.
So, uh, great, great. Okay, so let's start talking about my image. Um, before showing you the image and the time lapse. Um, yeah, sorry about that, everyone. We're gonna try to
Yeah.
fix that and find a solution for the future. But yeah, okay, so as Jourdan mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, we had the same theme and we tried to tackle it in our own ways and also in our own styles. And for me, with the three keywords that we received, survivor, merchant, and dealer, I went with something like a war veteran that got into drugs, and then he started selling like drugs or marijuana or whatever, and then
Edgy.
it what
Edgy.
edgy, yeah, and it quickly became a cult because the way that he brings himself and presents himself in such a chill manner, it makes people want to have a chill life as well. So that's how it began.
It's the drawing table podcast called.
Exactly. And in a way, it's a bit ironic. And I also wanted to have a bit of contrast in having the setting in an abandoned hospital while the the person is selling drugs, not for good, but for, I don't know, for spreading his beliefs in a way. But these are the sketches that I started with, and I didn't do much because I actually found a really nice reference photo that I really like, and I just based my concept from that reference photo instead of making something completely new. Then I cleaned up the sketch, and this is all done in our pilot episode, so you can watch that on YouTube if you guys want to see the process.
That's a good plug, Ken.
Yeah, go to our YouTube.
Yeah.
And then this is done on our second episode, and then I can show you guys the video. All right, I'm gonna play it.
Sorry, just coughing. Ooh,
It's fine.
what's this? Is this Blender?
It's in Blender, yeah. So as you guys can see, it's Blender 2.8, and I've barely used 2.79 anymore because it's just old now, and the interface for 2.8 is so much more intuitive. So I started using that. Anyway, with this piece, I started out blocking the scene in 3D to get the sense of space and also scale, because I think that's the most important part about making an environment is the sense of scale and proportions and space. And right, and also I started adding a human figure as soon as possible because that helps us ground the environment and also get, like I said, the sense of proportions of how things should be, like how big they are and all that stuff. And also I've tried to find as many models, free models as possible so that I don't have to model them. And in this case, I found an ambulance model on sketchfab.com, and I used that to get a quick base, like a quick block in of the scene. And I think I'm gonna, okay, now it, and then now I started blocking in the light quickly because with Blender 2.8, there's a render engine called Eevee, and it makes it really easy to change your lights and the colors of your scene, of your lights, and it just makes iterating your scene very quick and easy. It's such
Yeah, I
an
mean,
awesome process.
it looks so realistic too, like with the light bloom and atmosphere.
Yeah, and as you can see just now, I was still messing with the composition because for some reason it just didn't feel right yet with how
Mm.
the things are laid out, and you will see that throughout the time lapse. I keep changing the composition a little bit, like shifting it a little bit, and it just keeps. I just kept doing that. I don't know why, it
Yeah.
just didn't feel right. Um, in the end, I added some cardboard boxes to fill up the scene and also to make the composition more balanced. As you can see later on, like I added some cardboard
Mm.
boxes at the bottom left of the
Mm.
composition just to balance
I,
out the scene because it just feels a bit too heavy on the right side because everything's pointing to the right and there's
mm.
nothing grounding it to the left.
Right. And I think it's also an opportunity to add storytelling elements, right?
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, you said to add what? Sorry? You cut off.
It's an opportunity to add storytelling elements as well, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's such an easy thing to model, and it makes filling up your scene very quick.
Mm.
I mean, in the sense that you need a lot of props to make your scene more believable, and
Mm.
since this place is abandoned, I figured that they should have some cardboard boxes to use as I don't know as a shelter or
Yeah.
it's a lot of it's very useful for a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also blocked in like a shack just beside the ambulance uh, for that's for his shelter. And then I
Right,
also yeah, so the idea is to have him build his empire around the ambulance since
right.
the ambulance is becoming like a stage for him to do like a talk or
Yeah, or
something like
sermon,
that.
I guess.
Sermon.
It's kind of like the I don't know what you call it actually, the pulpit that he's preaching from.
Hmm. Yeah, and I was also blocking in the light a bit more, adding in some volumetrics. And in this one, I actually first started by making big blocks of things in 3D. And then now I started detailing those blocks because it's much easier to do this in 3D instead of going in
Yeah.
Photoshop and then adding in details one by one. Because in this case, you get free perspective and also free material.
Yeah,
And
I think that's always the advantage of 3D is that, as you're talking about with the cardboard boxes and everything, is that it allows you reusability. And with the composition explorations, it just allows for quick idea generation and exploration as well.
yeah, definitely. And if you
It's
notice,
just so powerful.
yeah, if you noticed, I also reused the planks a lot. And since it's all hidden by the fog, the volumetrics, it's easy to fake things
Mm.
in the 3D part.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, Ken, and there's a few comments in the chat as well that I can
right,
help read
let
out to
me
you.
pause it for a moment just so I can read the chat. Evie can do that light emitter. Eevee is basically like a game engine. It's live. What do you call it? Shit,
Open source.
not open source, but like you can move stuff like in games. So it's not pre-rendered stuff. It's real time rendering. But
So powerful.
light emitter, I'm not sure what you mean by light emitter, but what I did was just adding lights, and also for the flames I made some cutouts of planes shaped in like a fire shape, and then add an emission shader to it.
It's the most realistic flames I've ever seen, Ken.
It's actually not bad to get your scene blocked in.
Oh no, I agree. I mean, yeah, I'm just messing. And Burrito also comments, it makes me smile to see those humans doing the Y pose. Oh yeah, it's so great. Nothing more
Yeah.
beautiful and majestic than a beautiful Y or T pose.
Oh yeah, and also added some fake lights at the top of the building because it didn't have enough depth separation.
Mm.
So I think it's fine to do that in 3D because in Photoshop I'm just gonna add that anyway. So why not
Keen
do it in
Motion,
3D?
Welcome.
Hello, hello Keen. And then
And just what you were saying about the lighting, I do think it adds that glaring light feel, like when I guess a spotlight gets shined on you, and it feels dramatic and almost, to a certain extent, it's almost chaotic to me, because I associate it with like escape scenes where police suddenly shine their
Yeah.
spotlights on an escaping criminal. So it has that kind of feel to it, you know.
yeah. It's good, it's good. Oh, and at this stage, I was messing around with the textures that I grabbed from polygon.com.
Oh shoot! There's actually depth in.
What do you
So
mean?
it's actually like bump map or displacement.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
man.
I added that to quickly get textures in, and basically I just grab whatever free stuff that they have and then reuse it in my scene because it makes the process much easier in Photoshop at the end.
Man,
So
that's
because
so
I don't have to
cool,
put
though.
yeah. See, they have like a bump displacement map. Because in this case, I don't have to add photos in Photoshop.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a great time saver.
Oh,
And
and the notes. Yeah, it's very tricky at first, but just a bit of Googling and then you should be able to get it started very quickly.
I think I'm too low IQ for that, Ken.
No, it's very simple. And then and then I rendered the diffuse, the AO, and also the Z depth. Z depth is basically a file that you can control to be able to get the depth of the scene on a 2D image, and then it's very useful because you can do selections based on the depth of the objects in the scene.
Yeah.
And then I started bringing in photos to Photo Bash. It's a very straightforward process actually from this point on. It's just
Maybe go over it a bit more, because it might be straightforward for you, but for some people, including myself, it might not necessarily be as intuitive of a process. So maybe explain what exactly you're doing to achieve
Right.
how to seamlessly integrate the photos into the environment,
right.
and how to break that 3D look, which I think is a problem that plagues some people that use 3D for their concept art.
Yeah.
Just to quickly also say hi to Kenny. It's great to have you in the stream, brother.
Hello.
And go on, Ken. Sorry
No,
about that.
this is not for the banana military. Okay, yeah. So good question. Okay, let's start with breaking the 3D-ness of a render. I think I'm gonna pause it for a sec. Let me see if I have the render, because I think it's easier to show the render. Give me one moment, guys.
You can always open up your PSD too if you think that will help make the explanation process a little bit easier.
Sure, yeah.
Yes, we're getting a master class from Ken.
Oh no. Okay, gonna switch the scene quickly, just for a sec. Oh no, that's the final image. Spoilers.
Oh, spoilers! Oh man, I don't want to watch the time lapse now.
Anyway, this is the base render that I got. Then, as you can see, everything is very straight. I think that's the problem with 3D. It's very precise. So if you want to get something very precise, you use 3D, right? But in real world, there's always like wear and tear and a lot of textures and like leaks, water leaks, and things like water droplets and water marks making a streak on the walls, even rust, things like that. And that's something that takes a lot of time to do in 3D. So like once you know that and acknowledge that, and not be afraid of changing stuff in Photoshop and breaking the 3D. It's basically just adding textures, like I said, like adding those streak marks, adding more details like the windows and panes.
I see.
It's actually a lot of real world observation as well, because if you don't observe what actually happens in real life, it's difficult to add these kinds of details as well to your scene.
Oh, definitely. Especially if you're going for a more realistic scene, it's crucial that you get these small details correct. And also on top of that, if you're doing a modern scene, because we're so used to seeing a lot of these details on our day-to-day life, or maybe for us that live in Jakarta or the dodgy side of Newcastle, we can see these grungy textures all around us, and if it's not there, I think we innately know that there's something off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, unfortunately, Burrito, it means that we do have to go out of our dark caves and explore.
And I think it's really important to get out of your room or your house once in a while. And of course, not just for a walk, but also observing how things are in real life. Because I'm not sure about you, but I usually find myself very intrigued sometimes by how lights react in our world and how they like fall and create these interesting patterns and colors on like the ground or the wall.
Yeah,
do you find that stuff interesting, or do you subconsciously look at that stuff in real life?
Oh no, I do. I consciously look at it, and there's just so many things. But I tend to find that what I'm usually focused on right now is what I'm more inclined to seeing. So if I'm working on architecture, I'll maybe focus on the architectural details. But if I'm focusing on color and light, maybe that's what I'm looking out for when I'm outside. So I think my focus tends to depend on the problems that I am trying to solve during that moment.
Interesting.
So
And
back to your process, Ken. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
sorry,
you can
one
go.
quick one. How many hours from 3D compositing to finish? I think the 3D took around 3 or 4 hours, and also including alt tabs and houseworks. And then the final image took me about 5 to 6 hours, I think. So in total, it's about the same as you, 10 hours ish.
Okay, cool. That's good to know.
Yeah, and also about making your photos look more integrated into the scene. I think it's all about value and color. I'm gonna pause this for a second because I think this is a point that I want to talk about very quickly.
Yes.
But integrating photos, what you need is a good value. So the photo's values need to be similar to the value of where it's gonna be placed in, and also the color as well, which you can use match color. But in this process, I used color palette.
I see. So that's your primary tool for color grading.
Yeah,
I
at
see.
this moment. And then
Naruhodo.
this process, this stage, usually take some time to stop at what I'm doing, what I'm painting, and then just observe what needs to be done, or what needs to be added, or what's missing. So if you
That's a very
see,
good point.
yeah, like I make notes on the painting itself, as you can see, like in this one, I haven't done the main guy, it's himself. So I marked that as number one, and then also the crowd, I marked that as number two, because those two are, I think, the most priority at the moment, because if those two are not there, then I can't sell the painting at all, the mood. But if everything else is not there, I mean, I can kind of still sell the mood, but it's just like an extra. So those two are my priority right now. And then made other notes, such as like the windows, doors. I need to add that to the building so it doesn't look 3D, because buildings always have details like that.
I see.
And then
Is this
yeah,
a
just-
practice that you apply regardless of the style or piece that you're doing, or is this something that you find more helpful with 3D and photo bash workflow?
You mean making notes like that?
Yes, making notes.
I think it applies to every kind of work that I do, but mostly more in environment and mood paintings, like key arts,
Where
because
there's a lot more, I guess,
It-
to manage, right?
yes, exactly. There's a lot to keep track of. So it's so easy to get lost in rendering, and I just find it really helpful to stop once in a while and then reassess what you're doing. Just
Yeah,
take a look at the whole
definitely.
painting and see what still needs a lot of work.
Yeah, I
And-
definitely agree on that.
And then I also like I actually also do that to have a bit of rest for myself, because like when I'm not sure about you, but for me, when I'm doing a painting like this, like a big painting like this, I get a bit demotivated midway. So I need
Jangan
to
gitu
take-
dong.
No, it's true. So I need to take a step back just to observe what needs to be done, so I know exactly the steps that I need to take to finish it. Because sometimes when I don't do that, I just get lost in rendering, and then I just get somewhat depressed because I don't know when it will end in a way.
Right. Yeah. I guess this gives you like a step-by-step guide in a way of like what you need to do, which contextualizes what it is you exactly need to do, right? Otherwise, it just seems like a never-ending struggle where one problem comes after you right after another.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And I think it's a very helpful thing to do if you get stuck on a painting. Just take a step back, make some notes, and do it again.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that, and something that I personally highly recommend for people that get stuck on a piece is to just take a step back and analyze it from a more objective point of view when you come back to it.
And then I also like to add some post-processing effects in the middle of my painting, like post-processing and color correction and adjustment. So I know what the final kind of an idea of what the final result will be, and knowing that somehow makes me a bit more motivated to finish the painting, because I know
see.
what the end will look like. 'Cause
Yeah.
you know, when you're doing it, sometimes it still looks really bad. So I need to add just a bit of sugar to it, so I get more motivated to finish.
That's an interesting analogy. The way that I see it is like we're still stuck in the dark forest and seeing a shaft of light just peering through at the end, in the horizon. It gives you something to want to dash towards. If it's just a continuous dark forest, it just feels like I want to lay down and just die.
That's so dark. Yeah.
I mean, but that's kind of what happens with some pieces, right? We just give up on it. And it could be for a lot of different reasons. And I think sometimes it's just not knowing what to do or where to progress from there, right?
And at this
Right?
stage, yeah. Oh, and
Okay, good.
Keen
Go on.
said, "Why is she doing yoga?" I think I'm still having a difficult time finding the right photos for photo bashing. So a lot of time I just find whatever that could be useful for the painting, and then put that in the image, and then painting over a lot of it.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I think there are better ways to do this. Maybe like taking a photo of yourself, but
Yeah, it can be a bit tiring. I mean,
A
you
bit.
can just pay the local hobo around the corner,
yeah.
you know, just give him a sandwich and just take a few photos of him.
But yeah, if you see the crowd, the cult itself, a lot of them are mostly painted manually, especially the ones at the back, because you don't really see them or notice them anyway. So
Right.
and then
So
mhm,
once you detail the ones in the front, you can kind of rely on our ability to extrapolate information, right?
right,
To fill in the gaps.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And then I added some fog to give some more depth separation, and then now I'm adding more details to the ambulance because the model that I have was not very
Mm.
good. It looks really
Mm.
flat, as you can see.
Yeah.
So I just added more textures and more stuff for it
I
to
see.
feel more realistic, like reflection
Mm.
of the flames and some side side view mirrors. And
Yeah.
then at this stage, I'm started adding more leaks, like watermarks, leaks, uh, basically
I got
wear
a
and tear.
question, Ken. Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah, no problem.
in terms of layer management, are you merging stuff at this point, or are you leaving all of your photos and adjustment layers? Because that's one problem I have when I photo bash, is that I end up having hundreds and hundreds of trash layers.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure how other people do it, but for me, if things are similar in terms of their usage, for example, the cracks on the ground, I used multiple photos, right?
Mm.
But in the end, I merged them because they serve the same purpose. So in order to
Right.
keep things more manageable, I just merged them all into one layer. Of
Mm.
course, it's not possible when you have um, layer what do you call it? Like the layer blending modes, like multiply or screen, or
Yeah.
it's not possible. So I usually tend to stay away from layer blends because yeah, because they make things difficult to adjust. And then in
Yeah,
terms
I
of
see.
the management itself, I typically separate things by background, middle ground, and then foreground.
Mm. Oh, those are cool, the ground reflections that you're adding. It really just, it's those little touches that make a place feel more believable, I think.
Yeah, it felt like too empty and too 3D. Oh, that's
Yeah.
it. So I wanted to add some reflections,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the final image. And if you guys want to see the full image,
Awesome. The
it's
mood is
on
really great,
ArtStation.
Ken.
Thank you very much.
Let's give Ken a nice Big Mac slaw.
Oh, thanks. Thank you guys. Okay, it's on my ArtStation now. I am gonna link it.
Oh, already?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm behind the curve now. Okay, everyone, like and comment.
Like, subscribe.
I'm gonna.
comment.
I'm not the first to like it.
Okay, Emma asked, do you think about value abstraction when planning the composition?
Wait, your sound's breaking up a bit.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm gonna go back to the duo stream.
Okay.
Okay,
There we
so
go.
Evan asked, do you think about value abstraction when planning the composition? Um, I think I do that subconsciously because uh, let me think about how can answer this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my main focus is to have
Sorry.
this guy, the Jesus hobo, be the focal point, right? So I want the biggest contrast to be here, and everything else kind of blend in into the darkness of the night. And when you say value abstraction, I think the thing that I do in this piece is to have the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
When you squint, I want to have the foreground mostly in the dark,
Mm-hmm.
and then also like this piece here be in the dark, and it all blends into like one value when you squint.
So like one value shape.
Yeah, and then this guy, sorry, not this guy, but the platform that he stands on is another value, and then he himself is surrounded by this glowing light to make him look like he's exiting out of a light tunnel, so he looks like some kind of savior for these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the point is to have this guy very I want to single out this guy, so all the focus of our eyes are on him.
Right. I think
So,
he's also the most complex shape that, and also a dark against a light, which helps him to stand out above everything else.
yeah,
Because even
and
squinting my eye, it feels like he's the one that stands out the most due to contrast through values, light, dark on light, and also just simple versus complex shapes. So it's like a hierarchy of shape complexity.
mhm. But I agree, and I think like Evan said about the value abstraction, I think it's really important to keep things that are uh, not important to the composition, and keep them grouped together in terms of value, so they don't detract your eye from what's really important in the image.
Mm-hmm.
I
Hey,
hope that answers
Ian
the
Harry.
question.
Great to have you here, man. Thanks for coming. Yes, it is the broccoli dude. I do recognize his name as well. It's really great to
Nice.
have you on the stream, man.
Wait,
And
broccoli dude?
he has a broccoli avatar on his Instagram.
Oh,
And also, Conway Art also has a
yeah,
little bit of
this part,
feedback for
right?
you.
Yeah, I noticed that when I finished the painting.
Ah,
I'll fix that.
yeah.
There we go.
You can always edit the image on your art station. Oh, the foreground.
Wait, which one? Bit of time you were
Maybe
sent-
the guy where he's like raising his hand.
Oh,
it's
this
touched
one.
right of the focal point. Ooh. Maybe it's one
Yeah,
of
yeah.
some of
It
those things.
looks like he's pinching the palette.
Yeah, it's a giant that's constructing the stage.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Thanks for noticing that.
Yeah, and
Something that
Latte
I need to
Milky
keep
also.
in mind.
Latte Milky also have some feedback. And in
Oh,
the
yeah, sure.
meantime, while she's typing it
free.
out, I'll just answer the. You know what? I'll hold it. I'll hold it until the Q&A session. But we have to move on soon, actually.
Yeah, we should move on soon.
So
Yeah.
if you don't mind, Latte Milky, we'll address your feedback in the Q&A, which
Sounds
should
good.
be right now, actually. So I'll kick it off by going back to some of the questions that Evan had also asked earlier. And if you can bring out the Q&A graphics, Ken, if you still remember. There we go. And do you have the OBS little graphic that flies across the screen? Well, in any case,
Yeah.
it's alright. So Evan asked earlier, how do you make your decisions on proportions when designing? And the way that I like to think about it is just that, I mean, I'm sure you hear this a lot, but it's got to do with a lot of bigger shapes to medium, then smaller shapes. And as long as you start with a bigger shape and using that as a point of relativity for everything else that you do, it becomes a lot easier to do so. And I'll actually bring up the PSD that I have for the image just to explain that a little bit. So the way that I started it out actually was focusing, should be in the video, but it's alright. So I focused on doing the big part, the skull as a big shape, and some as the primary shapes that I'm building the focal point around. And then I moved on to the entrance, which I consider to be the secondary focal point. And after I've established those, so imagining the building just stripped bare of any details, of any smaller ones, then I can zoom in a little bit and focus on playing around with different lengths and also widths that I haven't have earlier. As you can see, this tusk or giant rib cage or bone structure is this wide. If I bring out my brush, it is around this wide, and the skull is around this wide, which means that if I want to play around with a smaller shape, it does mean that I have to try playing with maybe a shape that's that thick instead. And also with the tooth as well, instead of it being that long, I play around with something that's a bit smaller here. And I keep on doing that, and by layering detail and smaller shapes upon the bigger ones. So if I continue to zoom in, then I will consider these ropes that tie around the structure to be even smaller, and the dots here, the studs on the bags, as even smaller shapes as well. So if you start big and not zoom in, and you keep on zooming in, after a while you'll naturally be creating those shape varieties as well. And that's just talking about the size itself. And another factor to consider is even the basic shapes such as squares. Sorry, I'm using a mouse right now. Squares, circles, and triangles. So in this case, the crocodile skull is a bit more of a triangle, and this is a lot more of a triangle as well for the entrance. So I decided to play around with a circular shape for the body, and also some squarish shapes for the those protrusions from the spine, and also some rounded shapes here as well, and half curves, which I would consider more to be circular as well. So if you try and play and implement these different basic shapes in your piece and spreading it around, you'll be able to create interest and have more for the eye to feast on. So I have circles here, and I have squares here. I have circle-ish shape with a semi-triangle, triangle, circle. So if you think of it in that way, it makes it a lot more easy to break it down. So hopefully that answers your question, Evan.
Cool. Awesome answer.
And there's also one question that you can ask, which Stellar Hal asked earlier, which is, what's the pros and cons of working in a studio?
Hold on. Which one? I think I missed.
He did ask it a while back, which I said I'll respond later on.
Hold on.
He asked, what's the pros and
You
cons
asked
of
the
working in
question
a
again?
studio?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. What was the question?
What are the pros and cons of working in a studio?
I think you cut off. Sorry.
What are the pros and cons of working in a studio?
Shit. For some reason, you just keep cutting off at the last word. Can you type it?
Oh.
Oh, working in a studio. I think that's for you, man.
No, you also you answer it.
Fine. I'll answer first. The pros and cons of working in a studio. The pros, you get a nice consistent schedule, and the cons is you get a nice consistent schedule, because I think the best part about freelance is the flexibility of time, but in a way that's also a double-edged sword. So, yeah, that's my answer for that question.
Okay. Well, just to add on to that as well, I think the advantages of working in a studio is that you actually do get to see the workflow up close and the pipeline, and the advantage of getting to know people and learn from them directly. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy my job as much as I do. It really is, well, because of the people there, and it makes going to work a lot more worthwhile. And yeah, I mean, also it's a good way to show people that you're capable of working on a production, and increases your, what do you call it, your clout and reputation, I suppose, and credibility. So I do think that it is an important thing to experience for most people, although I do acknowledge that some people might not find it to be suitable for them.
I agree. That's a nice
Right.
answer.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, let's keep this fast.
Yes.
'Cause,
So last one,
we're actually fast.
just to address Latte Milky's feedback, and we actually do have a very special new segment for you guys next. So be sure to stay tuned for that.
So, okay, so last question. The cardboard boxes in the foreground is a bit too clean because they were holding some sort of tank with fire in it. Don't know if small dirt or ashes will make difference since they were in the shadow. So I think she's talking about this part right here. And I must say that it does look kind of confusing because I think I didn't shape this quite right. It's supposed to be like a barrel with flames in it. You know how hobos usually use a barrel and then they put stuff in it and then they create like a flaming barrel to keep themselves warm up. That's the idea here, but I think the addition of this box here in particular makes it difficult to see. So
I see.
that's a good point. But yeah.
And I think she also says something else. As for the cult leader, maybe it would look better if he was holding a cult-like object like wine glass silhouette, indicating he was drinking diluted drugs or something. That's actually a good point. And it's
Wait, which one?
She typed it up in the comment.
For the cult leader, maybe it would look better if he was. Oh yeah. I was actually gonna add some object here, but I ran out of time. So that's my excuse. I was gonna add that. But yeah, it's a really good point. I think it would add a lot more to the story if I add something.
Yeah. Well, it's all right. I mean, you can always go back and add the piece. I mean, add that to the piece if you would like.
Yeah, and then let's answer this quickly. This is from Bima. Are you a beaver? Are we
No.
beavers? No. Okay.
No.
We're not beavers.
Okay. Phew, good to know.
Okay.
So all right, moving on to a new segment,
That's
actually, that we'll be doing from now on at the end of every podcast. And if you would do the honors, Ken, of changing it,
okay. Let's.
just change the banner first. Or you
I
don't
did.
have it.
I did.
Okay, there we go. So, it's a segment called Artwork of the Week, and it's an opportunity for us to just share our appreciation of some artwork that has wowed us during our browse throughout the week. And we actually have a few images that we picked out for this episode, so I'll pull it up really quickly on my Photoshop. And this is the first artwork that I think has really left an impression on me this week, and it's actually by one of my good friends from work, Morton, and this is his character design challenge entry for the theme of caveman this month. And I just really love the way that he's managed to just capture the mood and the lighting of the piece with such seemingly minimum and effortless strokes. Just the way that he's able to express so much with just such simple strokes as well. And I think the fact that he's decided to integrate the mammoth skull into the side of the cliff is a really cool integration. I mean, it's a really cool idea.
Hey, it could be in your piece world, the same world as your piece. I mean,
that's true, actually. So maybe he's buying drugs from the store, from the dealers of my piece. But yeah, I just really love this piece that he's made, and yeah, that's the reason why I chose it for this week's artwork of the week.
Cool. And as for me,
and before that, we also left his social media links here. So be sure to give him a follow on his Instagram and ArtStation. You definitely will not regret it. He has some really awesome works up there.
yeah. Right. And as for me, I found this piece by, as you guys all know, by Rancha. And I really love this piece in particular. And when I saw that, I was really wowed by it because, I don't know, I've never seen Gundam in such a high detail and realistic, like amounts of things that, like usually you see a Gundam in such a distance that you don't really see how it's built. So in this piece in particular, I was really wowed by the amount of details and how it looks like it might actually be real. And of course also his awesome sense of lighting really makes it feel like it's real, even more real.
It's just so iconic. Like you just know from a mile away that it is a Rancha piece.
Yeah. Oh, and Latte says the text is too small.
Yeah, I did zoom in, actually.
Yeah. I don't think Rancha needs like a plugin.
Yeah, well, maybe there's some unfortunate soul out there that still hasn't heard of Rancha. Yeah. But in either case, this segment for this week is a little bit shorter since we haven't really had as much time to browse, but hopefully this will be an opportunity for us to just expose the audience to new artists as well. And who knows, maybe one of your artwork will also be featured here one day.
All right, so yeah, we are finally at the end of the episode, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching this episode. And do you have anything else to say? Do you want to say anything to the audience?
Oh, me? Of course I do. Just want to say, thank you so much, guys, for being here with us for today's podcast. I think despite the rough start that we both had before the podcast, it ended up being a very enjoyable one, despite being longer. And we're actually curious to know, do you guys enjoy this length of podcast that's a bit longer, or perhaps you'd like it shorter? Do let us know. But as usual, we'll have the videos and the recorded videos of this podcast up on our YouTube channel, and we're also going to upload the time lapse of our individual images without all of the commentary and our ugly mugs in the way. So you can browse it at your own leisure on the YouTube channel. So Ken, if you would please, it's already up on the screen.
Yep.
But yeah, be sure to follow us on our social media links for updates on future streams, and also just to watch our previous content as well. And before you all leave the podcast, we have one more special announcement that we'd like to make.
Okay.
So this is actually relating to next week's podcast. And we would like to announce that we will be having another very special guest with us next week. So we're very proud to announce that we'll be having TCK, or as some of you might know him as Thomas Chamberlain Keane on social media, to have him sketch for us and to also dig his brain and pick at it as we interview him. And of course, we would love to have you guys join us and join in on the conversation as well. So be sure not to miss this one, guys. He's a very talented artist and a very good friend of mine too. So it'll be a really fun and insightful podcast.
Oh, and one thing to note is that this podcast will be on Sunday instead of the usual Saturday. So make sure that you don't miss it because it's on Sunday.
Right, yeah, it'll be on Sunday because of some scheduling issues that we have. But that's a shame to hear that you won't be able to attend Vyuki, but once again, there's always a chance to watch the VODs. But what we might do this time actually is open up the Q&A or have people submit some of their questions ahead of time so that we're able to formulate some of them for the interview. That might be a good idea, Ken.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, be sure to put this on your calendar, the 10th of March, which is next Sunday at the same time at 8:30 Jakarta time or 1:30 London time. So be sure to not miss it. We will be live on Twitch. So
yes, as usual. So it'll be great fun. And so just to wrap it up, thank you so much, guys, for joining us today for our podcast. It's been great fun. And thank you to those people that submitted questions, gave us feedback, and joined in on the conversation as well. This is exactly what we envisioned when we made the Drawing Table podcast. And hopefully you all got something out of it and enjoyed it as well.
Definitely. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in and chatting with us along.
Yes, and we will see you guys at the next Drawing Table.
See you guys.
All right, take care, everyone.